Host of the Guy Benson Show. It's not easy to quash stories when there's video of it, Guy.
Nope. And it's also going to get some attention when you're a member of Congress and you tell homeless people to go home at an event. That is a notable quotable, as one might say. Look, we shouldn't be surprised, right? Go figure. Here is someone who famously advocated people being hounded and menaced if they worked in the Trump administration when they're out in public. That person is going to lack empathy on other things as well, that person being Congresswoman Waters. And she's also been in Congress for what? Forever. So she's out of touch on top of it. And I think the icing on the cake of the story, Dana, that you just mentioned, is when a local reporter out there contacted her to talk about this story, to report what people have seen, what is on the internet. She said that he would be doing himself a disservice and harming the community for simply noticing actual events. She was bullying the reporter to try to shut down the story. This is like the perfect Maxine Waters storm.
Yeah, that report is with the LA Times. The quote that the Times attributed to her reads as follows: "You'll hurt yourself and the community trying to put this together without background. I don't want you to start trying to write it. You won't understand it." She could have explained it to them.
Yeah. Right, that's the point of journalism. You call someone up to say, hey, can I get some information on background? And instead of addressing that point and informing him, she clearly wanted to crush the story because it was embarrassing to her. It also reflects a policy failure in her state. California is a bastion of leftism. They can do basically whatever they want out there, the progressives. And homelessness is a huge crisis. Housing in general is a big crisis out there. And when you have someone trying to hold a politician, a powerful, long-tenured politician, accountable for any of it, that politician starts sharpening the knife and making basically threats saying, you'll hurt yourself. Right? That's basically saying you're going to hurt your career. I'll see to it. If you read between the lines, she wanted to crush this thing. She attempted to. Obviously, that's a failure because we're talking about it here.
Well, let's talk about another Southern California resident who is the president's son, Hunter Biden. Because all of a sudden the media is like, oh, maybe there was something to these stories. Check out these headlines from the Washington Post. Inside Hunter Biden's multi-million-dollar deals with a Chinese energy company. The New York Times, Hunter Biden paid tax bill, but broad federal investigation continues. And ABC says the federal probe into Hunter Biden's taxes intensifies. And yet Andrea Mitchell, NBC News yesterday, said this.
Washington Post reporting and a lot of other reporting on Hunter Biden has been, disturbing. There's been a lot of, there is a lot of smoke there, but not what President Clinton, the former President Trump, is claiming.
What do you make of that, Guy?
Okay, they don't get to really talk about conspiracy theories and, oh, look at all this smoke a year and a half late. There were other people reporting this stuff before the last election, and they all colluded with each other and big tech and the Biden administration to shut the whole thing down. They were doing what Maxine Waters was just trying to do, but more successfully, and they all did it together. And they called it Russian disinformation without any proof, without any evidence. That wasn't true at all. And here we are, month after month after month after month later, and the New York Times and the Washington Post suddenly are getting out in front of, I don't know, indictments or something coming down the pike in this federal investigation into Hunter Biden, which is ramping up. And by the way, there's no real connection to Joe Biden, is what we keep hearing. There's no evidence on that yet. Maybe, maybe not. But I remember an interview that Tucker Carlson did with Tony Bobolinsky, who worked with Hunter Biden on this stuff before the election, October 2020. Maybe they can go back and watch that videotape because it exists. They can maybe find it on YouTube, and then they can write a story about it, confirming it perhaps in like a year. Maybe they'll wait till after the midterm elections, and then Tony Bobolinsky might be discovered by the media and the revelations that he has at least alleged on national television that they all ignored and laughed at.
Let's see what the grand jury comes up with on this, and let's see what happens in midterms, because if you get a Republican in the House, a Republican majority, they're going to hold hearings on this thing for sure. Chuck Grassley on the Senate side is kind of leading the charge along with Ron Johnson of Wisconsin last night with Hannity. Here's Senator Grassley on that.
The media should have been doing their job in August of 2019 when I started this investigation, and instead what they were doing was peddling the information that the Democrats were putting out, is that we were peddling Russian disinformation.
Now, you're going to hear that phrase a lot, okay, if there is something that comes from this guy. But it seems like the quotes from the Washington Post, the Times, and ABC, etc., that most do eventually come around and perhaps kicking and screaming along the way, Guy.
Yeah, and I think the first point that we played in that soundbite from Senator Grassley is such a crucial one. Back when they all got together and decided this is not a story, this is Russia, whatever their excuse was, they could have been doing the type of journalism that we're finally seeing now back then. Like the Washington Post story, this week, I read it. I was like, okay, this is pretty good journalism. They went, they chased down documents, they authenticated things. They had no interest in doing any of that work at the time. I guess finally it can be said, so they're doing that journalism today. But as I said at the top, a year and a half late, I think a lot of Americans are not terribly impressed by belated journalism, but still better late than never, I guess, and we'll see where that federal probe goes. I think that's what probably is driving this.
Twitter doing their job for them by canceling the New York Post for a period of time during that critical election spot. Guy, thank you for coming back with us today.
You bet.
Thank you.
Severe storms packing a lethal punch.